Hello, my name is Stephen Rust, and I am Senior Instructor of Composition at the University of Oregon. The title of this presentation is Piloting Online First-Year Writing at a Public Research University. The presentation was originally intended to be delivered in Rhodes, Greece, in May of 2020. And as we all know, the world changed dramatically in February and March 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's a year later. The conference was postponed to Athens and has now been moved entirely online. So I am presenting from my home in Eugene, Oregon. The University of Oregon is an interesting place to be teaching. I grew up in a neighboring state in a part of the world, the Western United States, which historically is one of the most recent examples of of the displacement of people and the progression of white civilization across the United States. That civilization is changing today. Oregon is changing, and it's exciting to be part of these changes. Oregon is also a place that is famous for Nike and football. It's a place that's famous for the outdoors, and it's also famous as a place where young people are always thinking about the newest thing in terms of social justice, always have themselves politically thoughtful. So it's a really exciting place to teach, and a place that I think really informs the work that I do online, and I think the work that my program has done as part of this project. So the kind of underlying theme of the presentation is place. Does it matter where you're at when you're online? And I'm going to argue that it does matter. In this photograph, this is kind of a stock photograph of the university. The tall building that you see there is actually my building. So I work in that building. The view from my building faces the famous Jordan Schnitzer Art Museum, which you can catch a glimpse of in the movie Animal House, which was filmed on campus. Ken Kesey attended the University of Oregon. The University of Oregon is also Kalapuya Ihili, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people who were forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon by the U.S. government following treaties between 1851 and 1855. Today, Kalapuya descendants are primarily citizens of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, and they continue to make important contributions to their communities, the University of Oregon, and the world. I am a Euro-American. I grew up in North Idaho and kind of found my way to this place. And the people that are here and the people that surround me, as well as the university itself, really do, I feel, inform the success of our pilot. So we began our pilot in 2016, 2017 with some challenges. First of all, a lack of institutional infrastructure. Coupled with inadequate support for faculty in terms of professional development funding, classroom support, and also clarity about the curriculum of our writing program in order to make sure that the online courses that we were teaching share the same vision as what people are doing in person. A third challenge that all online teachers face, right, is reaching disengaged students and thinking about academic dishonesty. Our lack of institutional infrastructure became something that continues to be apparent at the University of Oregon. The University of Oregon, as you can see kind of from the marketing video screenshot there in the bottom of the screen, is a place where place matters. It matters that we bring thousands of people to Eugene, Oregon, that we have this shared experience of being on campus together. And even during the pandemic, when you're wearing a mask or you're Zooming with people, you get this shared feeling that people are excited about being back to the buzz of campus when we get that opportunity. Our sort of partner or sister school to the north, about 60 kilometers north of us in Oregon, Oregon State University, also has a kind of ethos of place attached to it as well, but their campus has moved far ahead of most of the rest of the country in terms of building an infrastructure for online education. The Oregon State University eCampus is typically ranked in the top 5 nationally by the U.S. News and World Report agency. And there is an entire sort of administrative infrastructure, networking support, media support, teaching support, specifically designed for online education that they have developed there and that we're sort of getting to. And those of us in the writing program in online composition teaching, working with first-year students, are right at this beginning moment. We were some of the first group of people to be funded by UO Online. The history goes back even further, right? So within the College of Arts and Sciences, our previous program administrator in composition was able to secure funds for 2 instructors to develop writing courses. One of those instructors became an administrator and used that experience to provide additional funding and development for people like me and a second generation of instructors. And then we became part of a team of facilitators to grow the program even further, so that as of 2020, 55 sections, 55 individual class sections of first-year writing are being taught online, compared to 1,000 total sections every year of writing. Then we hit the pandemic, and suddenly all of the challenges that we had been working on as a small pilot group were hitting the entire university. And thanks to the leadership of our composition administration and the online team, we were able to turn that challenge into a success by providing a sense of support for the rest of the composition program. And a couple of our instructors, 2 of my colleagues, one of whom was a key administrator in all this, won a major teaching award for their work. So our goals have been to use our experience as a group of teachers, starting first with 2 teachers. Then I came on board with several others. We became a group of 7 teachers, and then have ballooned just a little bit to about 9 or 10 teachers. That's right before the pandemic. Of course, over the course of the last year, the entire faculty has been teaching online, both remote and in many cases teaching asynchronously as well, which is how our courses work. So UO Online is the new sort of University of Oregon model for online education. We have a fantastic new administrator, a vice provost for online education, who's leading that mission and is taking the work that people have been doing during the pandemic. And I can't wait to see how it impacts the relationship between online and in-person education coming out of the pandemic. In the composition program, our administration has provided us a lot of as much institutional support, and really what our administration has been good at providing people like me with is dynamic instruction models, training, and then the opportunity to train other instructors in ways of engaging students online so that we can achieve student success. And we measure student success in the writing classroom primarily by writing. And it's incredible how much writing students are doing in our online asynchronous courses and in the synchronous remote courses during the pandemic. The pilot courses that we developed, and again, the pilot ended in 2020, just before the pandemic, we were able to clearly demonstrate, if you look at, you could just pick a random sampling of anybody's final assignments from students, and the writing is difficult to distinguish from writing from our in-person courses. And in many ways, we see the writing improve because taking your instruction and putting everything into a website, into something that has to be as utterly concise, more concise than a presentation like this, easy to navigate, and able to revise, right, and update as possible. So student success has been one of our goals, and something that I'm happy to say that the pilot definitely achieved. For all of us that have been involved in this pilot program in the University of Oregon composition program, the rewards have been difficult to measure. There have been, I should say, right, in all transparency, some financial rewards. Different people got different amounts of funding at different stages in the process, with the key people who did the earliest work, the year one, needing additional funding and support to do the 2 first classes, become leaders, become trainers, become tapped into finding ways of funding the rest of us. And some of us who went through the pilot, a few people were funded less than people who came through the next year, and it's always a challenge to find sustainable funding sources. But that reward is important and worth mentioning, that the university supported us that way. The rewards are engagement. In many ways, in thinking, I've been part of a reading group, a research group that meets about 6 times a year to read work in inclusive pedagogies and innovative pedagogies, to kind of connect with the work that we're doing in online education and in the classroom. And I've also done some training, as many of us have done in the program, in universal course design, so that we can track the student engagement experience, both anecdotally through feedback, but also through the metrics that the university uses. I feel like one of the rewards that we haven't made shine enough is the career readiness that we're doing in online education. This chart that you see here represents a model for kind of how big picture educational groups think about what it means to prepare students for the workforce. And in the humanities and in first year writing, we often kind of balk at the language of corporatization, but career readiness means really being able to feed your family in the modern world. Sustainably, and to also participate in transforming the world from an extractivist mindset, one bent on gobbling up all the fossil fuels that we have to turn into transportation and energy and resources, and finding sustainable models to work in the world. And for students in online education, all of us that have been working in the pilot, and I've been very mindful of this in my own classes, have been thinking about this spectrum of things, right? From critical thinking, which is easy to teach in writing, analysis and ethos and skills like that, intercultural fluency by blending the kinds of reading assignments that I'm providing, and thinking about the language that I'm using to be plain spoken and avoid idioms and sarcasm as much as possible. And then in the middle, right, an online class is always about navigating digital technology. I've been mindful to try to incorporate some opportunities for students to collaborate with each other online. Leadership is a little bit trickier to develop, particularly in asynchronous courses, because the best way to kind of give students the opportunity to lead is to put them in a room together, or in a breakout room together, and managing schedules and kind of the ethos of accessibility, and whether it's right to be asking students to meet at a certain time, is something that we're working on. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for continued innovation. One of the things that I'll be looking at throughout this conference as I look at other videos and presentations is what kinds of digital collaboration technologies, particularly free technologies, that don't have paywalls or too much advertising, that can be incorporated into courses. Creative Commons projects as well. So that's some of the ways that we're touching on career readiness. I won't go through this entire list, but I think that you get the idea that these things are on our mind. And I think that they're on our mind in a way that really comes down to this last reward, which is about developing a meaningful connection with a student. Because as first-year writing teachers, we meet our students often right at the beginning of their academic career, and retention in our courses can be an indicator of the student's success, retention into the second year of college, into the remainder of the university. You cannot just simply give positive feedback that isn't meaningful and detailed, and sometimes critically minded when it needs to be, right? And what I have found in assessing student work, in emailing back and forth with students, and in reading evaluations, and all the other ways that I can think of that I interact with students in my online courses, I find that teaching is a two-way conversation, that learning is happening, and that students are teaching me as well, and that the person on the other side of the computer, the other side of the text, is a person. It's the same basic lesson that literature professors teach when they hand you a book by a writer, and they ask you to think about that person's words, and you become so engrossed in the world that you almost forget that a real human being wrote that. And in online education, place matters very much, because the people that I have been able to work with as part of this pilot, both at the university level, but especially my colleagues in the composition program, and the students that I've been able to work with, and people like tutors in the tutoring programs, and these kinds of one-on-one connections that I get to make through Zoom meetings, through chats, and even through an email connection is happening, and we're preparing the next generation. So after all of this, what kind of success do we have, and what are our outcomes? What kind of resources are providing? So one of the key resources that we provided was training. Our associate director of composition, who won a major university teaching award. I didn't ask if I could use his name, so I'll just describe my colleague that way. Was able to design with another colleague a training program for the entire composition program and English department, right? So close to 100 instructors. Our work has touched work in other programs and become a model. I've touched base recently with the Center for Student Athletes, and those students are receiving the resources that they need online to succeed. One of the things that we really need to keep tracking carefully is what kind of accessible technology resources students have, and that's something that we're working on as well. But because of the program leadership that we've had, and because of the communication that we've had among colleagues and with our university and then with our students, we've been able to design a set of resources, both in terms of online course models, website models, teaching materials, and things like that, but really a kind of ethos for online learning, and a way that I think we can do online learning in a public setting at a major research university and make a huge impact on students' lives. My 20 minutes are just about up. I am going to enjoy the rest of the online conference. Perhaps I'll see you all in person at one of the future e-learning and innovative pedagogies conferences.